He tailed her car through dark streets, convinced she was selling company secrets. But when she stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy to buy medicine for her sick 4-year-old twin daughters, his hands trembled on the steering wheel. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. The air conditioning in the Galleria Mall Cafe barely cut through the July heat of Houston, but it wasn't the weather making Jasmine Williams's palms sweat. She checked her watch again, 2:35, and adjusted her position on the elegantly uncomfortable chair. 40 minutes late. A part of her wondered if he would come at all. Around her, businessmen in tailored suits and women dripping with jewelry laughed over expensive lattes, their lives so different from hers. A black girl from Fifth Ward didn't usually find herself in places like this, amid the Neiman Marcus and Tiffany storefronts. Before meeting Nathan, she'd only been to the Galleria twice, once on a rare middle school field trip, and once when her mother cleaned the home of a wealthy client who needed emergency help at their store. Jasmine smoothed her department store dress, the nicest one she owned, purchased with her first financial aid check last semester. At 19, she'd worked so hard for that partial scholarship to the University of Houston. Now, 6 months into her relationship with Nathan Reynolds, everything she'd planned was at risk. A server approached, eyeing her nearly empty glass of water. "Would you like to order something while you wait?" "No, thank you," Jasmine replied, forcing a smile. "He'll be here soon." The server's expression held a familiar blend of skepticism and pity. This wasn't the first time someone had been stood up in this cafe. Jasmine's mind drifted back to their first meeting. She'd been working as a server at a charity gala, one of the many jobs she juggled to supplement her scholarship. Nathan Reynolds had noticed her immediately. At 27, the heir to the Reynolds oil fortune stood out even among Houston's elite, with his commanding presence and those striking emerald green eyes. "You're the only interesting person in this room," he'd whispered after cornering her by the service entrance, his cologne expensive and intoxicating. "Have dinner with me tomorrow." It wasn't a question, and despite her better judgment, she'd said yes. The secret relationship that followed was a whirlwind. Jasmine had never known such luxury. Dinners at restaurants where the menu had no prices, weekends at his private apartment where staff appeared and disappeared like ghosts. When he spoke about the future of Reynolds Oil, the company his grandfather had built into a multi-billion-dollar empire, his eyes lit up with ambition. "There you are." Jasmine startled, looking up to find Nathan standing beside the table. His Italian suit was impeccably pressed, his dark hair perfectly styled. Not a single drop of sweat despite the Houston summer heat. "I've been waiting for almost an hour," she said quietly as he sat down. "Board meeting ran long. You know how it is." He didn't apologize. He never did. "What was so urgent that we needed to meet in person? I have another meeting at 4. Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd rehearsed this moment for days, but now that it was here, words failed her. Under the marble table, her hands trembled. "I'm pregnant," she finally whispered. For 3 heartbeats, Nathan's face remained perfectly composed. Then his eyes, those beautiful green eyes that she'd dreamed might one day look at their child with love, narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Are you sure it's mine?" His voice was clinical, devoid of emotion. The question hit Jasmine like a physical blow. "How can you ask that? You know I've never been with anyone else." Nathan adjusted the platinum Rolex on his wrist, a gift from his father when he'd been promoted to senior vice president. "You understand the position I'm in. My father is grooming me to take over as president in 5 years. Reynolds Oil is worth $4 billion. His eyes met hers, cold and calculating. "Did you really think someone like you was part of that future?" "Someone like me?" Jasmine repeated, her voice barely audible. "Don't be naive, Jasmine." Nathan's tone softened, but not with kindness, with condescension. "You've been fun, an exotic experience. But you can't seriously believe the Reynolds family would accept a daughter-in-law from Fifth Ward? A girl with no connections, no proper education? You're not enough. You'll never be enough." Each word pierced her heart with surgical precision. Jasmine felt tears forming but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Nathan reached into his suit jacket and withdrew a cream-colored envelope, sliding it across the table with manicured fingers. $5,000. It's all you'll get from me. Solve your problem." "It's not a problem," Jasmine protested, tears finally spilling despite her best efforts. "It's our child. There is no our here." Nathan adjusted his Hermes tie, a gesture she'd once found endearing. Now it seemed mechanical, like watching a robot mimic human behavior. "You're a girl of no consequence from a neighborhood of no consequence. I've signed the papers. It's all there. Take the money and disappear from my life." He stood, towering over her. "And don't try to contact me. No one would believe you against me. You're insignificant." Jasmine sat frozen as he walked away, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. The envelope remained untouched on the table between them, like a white flag of surrender she hadn't agreed to wave. A waitress approached cautiously. "Miss, are you okay?" Jasmine nodded, unable to speak. The woman's eyes were kind, but the pity in them was unbearable. With shaking hands, Jasmine finally took the envelope and stood. She walked through the mall in a daze, past glittering storefronts and laughing shoppers, feeling invisible. Outside, the humidity hit her like a wall, the typical Houston summer afternoon bringing dark clouds threatening rain. At the bus stop, she finally opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of $100 bills, 50 of them, she counted mechanically, and a document. Legal jargon covered the page, but the essence was clear. By accepting the money, she waived any claim to paternity or support. Nathan's signature was already there, bold and flourishing at the bottom. The first drops of rain began to fall as Jasmine stared at the papers. She had $5,000 in her hands, more money than she'd ever held at once. But it came with the price of erasing her child's father, of accepting that she and her baby were a problem to be solved with cash. Her bus arrived, its brakes hissing in the beginning downpour. Jasmine boarded mechanically, clutching the envelope to her chest. Fifth Ward was only 30 minutes from the Galleria, but the distance felt insurmountable, a journey between different worlds. In her tiny apartment that evening, Jasmine curled up on her bed, finally allowing herself to sob uncontrollably. Her hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the life growing inside her. "I'm so sorry he doesn't want us." She thought about her options. The money could pay for an abortion, as Nathan clearly intended. It could help with medical bills if she chose adoption, or it could be a start, a painfully small one, for raising a child alone while trying to stay in school. Tomorrow she would think practically. She would make plans, research assistance programs, look into more flexible jobs. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of Nathan's rejection. Not just of her, but of their child. The rain pounded harder against her window as night fell. Jasmine pulled out a worn notebook and began to write, pouring her pain onto the page. She wrote about her dreams for college, for a career in technology, for a future that now seemed impossibly complicated. She wrote about the child she already loved, despite everything. And finally, she wrote a promise to herself, that no matter what happened, she would never allow Nathan Reynolds or anyone else to make her feel insignificant again. Sleep finally came as the storm raged outside, the thunder drowning out her quiet sobs. A week later, Jasmine sat stunned in a community clinic exam room, staring at the ultrasound screen. "Congratulations," the technician said warmly. "You're having twins." That same afternoon, she returned to find an eviction notice on her apartment door. The rent had been paid through Nathan's financial manager, an arrangement she'd foolishly accepted, not questioning why he insisted on it, now that support had vanished without warning. With trembling fingers, she dialed Nathan's number, only to hear the automated message, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." He had blocked her completely, erased her from his life as efficiently as deleting an unwanted email. That night, Jasmine sat on her bed, surrounded by the few possessions she could fit into one suitcase. $5,000, a pregnancy with twins, no apartment, no family support. Her mother had made it clear years ago that getting pregnant young would mean being on her own, just as she had been. For 3 nights, Jasmine slept in the Houston bus terminal, her suitcase clutched against her, until she secured a spot at the Salvation Army Women's Shelter. During the day, she applied for jobs that wouldn't ask too many questions about her growing pregnancy. By evening, she haunted the public library, using their computers to research prenatal care for twins and free coding tutorials, clinging to her dream of a technology career even as it seemed to slip further away. In the shelter's communal bathroom, Jasmine stared at her reflection one morning, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and the way her clothes already felt tighter around her middle. "We'll make it," she whispered to her unborn children. "Somehow, we'll make it." By the end of the month, she had secured 2 jobs, morning cleaning at a gas station and evening shifts at a fast food restaurant. Between shifts, she continued her self-education at the library, determined that her children would have opportunities she never had. When Zoe and Zoe were born prematurely in February of 2009, Jasmine wept at their tiny perfection. And when they opened their eyes for the first time in the NICU, revealing identical emerald green irises, Nathan's eyes, she made a solemn vow while holding their impossibly small hands through the incubator ports. One day, he'll see what he missed. One day, the world will know he was wrong about us. 15 years later, when Jasmine took the stage to accept her Entrepreneur of the Year award, worth more than the entire Reynolds empire, she would still remember the feeling of those rejection papers in her trembling hands under the Houston rain. The ultrasound monitor flickered with grainy black and white images that Jasmine couldn't quite comprehend. The technician moved the wand across her still flat stomach, smiling at whatever she saw on the screen. "Is something wrong?" Jasmine asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. She'd been feeling more nauseous than she expected, her exhaustion bone deep. Every pregnancy book she'd checked out from the library mentioned symptoms, but hers seemed excessive. "Nothing's wrong at all," the technician reassured her, turning the monitor slightly. "Do you see these 2 dark circles? Each one contains a developing baby. Congratulations, Ms. Williams. You're having twins." "Twins?" Jasmine's voice came out as a whisper. "2 babies?" "Yes, identical twins from the look of it. You'll need to see the doctor right away to discuss prenatal care. Multiple pregnancies are considered higher risk." Jasmine stared at the ceiling of the community clinic, her mind spinning. 1 baby had seemed impossible enough. 2 felt like the universe playing a cruel joke. $5,000 stretched half as far now. Every challenge would be doubled. Later that afternoon, clutching the ultrasound printout in one hand, Jasmine climbed the stairs to her apartment, already planning how to rearrange her budget. The sight of the official notice taped to her door stopped her cold. Eviction notice. 72 hours to vacate her key still worked. Inside, she immediately dialed Nathan's number, heart pounding. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She tried the secondary number he'd given her, for emergencies only. "This number has been disconnected." Frantic, she called the property management company. "I'm sorry, Ms. Williams, but the arrangement for your rent was terminated. The gentleman who was making the payments informed us 3 days ago that he would no longer be responsible for this unit." Jasmine sank to the floor, the phone still clutched in her hand. He hadn't just abandoned her. He'd ensured she would have nowhere to go. That night she packed a single suitcase with everything she couldn't bear to lose. Her textbooks, her mother's old photo album, the notebook containing her coding practice and app ideas, 3 changes of clothes, her precious laptop, second-hand but functional. For 3 nights, Jasmine slept sitting upright in the Houston bus terminal, her suitcase between her knees, jerking awake at every announcement and arrival. Security guards eyed her suspiciously, but let her stay when she purchased the cheapest ticket each evening, making herself a legitimate passenger waiting for a bus that never quite arrived. During the day, she walked until her feet ached, applying for any job that might hire a pregnant woman. Most didn't call back after seeing her condition. Some were explicit. "We can't have someone who'll need maternity leave so soon." On the 4th morning, the Salvation Army Women's Shelter had a vacancy. The room held 6 beds, each occupied by a woman with her own desperate story. Jasmine claimed the thin mattress gratefully, finally able to lie down properly. "First pregnancy?" asked her neighbor, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes. "Yes," Jasmine whispered. "Twins." The woman nodded, unsurprised by another story of abandonment. "Get all the rest you can now. It only gets harder." 2 weeks into her stay at the shelter, Jasmine finally landed 2 jobs. The morning shift cleaning at Speedy Gas started at 5 a.m., scrubbing bathrooms and mopping floors before the morning rush. From 2 p.m. until 10, she worked the counter at Burger Heaven, her feet swelling inside her shoes as the twins grew. Between shifts, she haunted the public library, using their free computers to continue her education. While other pregnant women watched daytime television or napped, Jasmine studied Python tutorials and basic app development, refusing to let her dreams die alongside her relationship. "You're killing yourself," warned Mrs. Jackson, the night supervisor at the shelter, finding Jasmine hunched over handwritten code at 2 in the morning. "Those babies need you healthy." "These babies need a future," Jasmine replied, rubbing her growing belly, "and I'm going to give them one." By her 5th month, the twin pregnancy was taking its toll. Her blood pressure spiked during a routine checkup, and the community clinic doctor ordered bed rest. "I can't," Jasmine protested. "I need my jobs." "You need to keep these babies inside you as long as possible," the doctor countered firmly. "Twins already come early. With your blood pressure, we're looking at serious complications if you don't rest." Tearfully, Jasmine called her employers. The gas station replaced her immediately. Burger Heaven, short-staffed and desperate, offered to hold her job for 2 weeks, no more. With no income and limited shelter time remaining, Jasmine applied for emergency assistance. The social worker who reviewed her case was overworked but kind. "You've got determination. I'll give you that," she said, reviewing Jasmine's file. "Most girls in your situation don't bring coding tutorials to their appointments." For the next month, Jasmine followed doctor's orders, lying on her side in the shelter bed, practicing coding problems in her notebook, designing user interfaces with colored pencils, and reading every programming book the library could deliver through their outreach program. At 28 weeks, still dangerously early, her water broke. "Hospital," Mrs. Jackson ordered, helping her into a taxi. "Don't worry about the fare. Just go." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of pain, fear, and medical terminology Jasmine barely understood. Preeclampsia, emergency C-section, neonatal intensive care. When she woke from the anesthesia, a nurse was waiting. "Your daughters are alive," she said first, knowing this was Jasmine's primary concern. "They're very small, just under 2 pounds each, but they're fighters." "Can I see them?" Jasmine's voice was raspy, her body still numb. "In a wheelchair only. You've had major surgery." The NICU was a foreign world of beeping monitors, incubators, and tiny, vulnerable bodies connected to machines. Jasmine stared at her daughters through the clear plastic, overwhelmed by their fragility. Tubes and wires seemed to outnumber their fingers and toes. "You can touch them," the nurse encouraged, showing her how to reach through the ports in the incubator. Jasmine gently stroked the impossibly small hand of her firstborn, then her sister. "Hello, Zoe," she whispered. "Hello, Zoe." The names she'd chosen during long nights at the shelter suddenly seemed too big for these tiny beings. On the 3rd day, when the twins were stable enough for prolonged visits, Jasmine wheeled herself to the NICU for the afternoon feeding. The nurse helped position the first baby, Zoe, for skin-to-skin contact beneath Jasmine's hospital gown. "She's opening her eyes," the nurse noted. "That's a good sign." Jasmine looked down into her daughter's face and gasped. Staring back at her were unmistakable emerald green eyes, Nathan's eyes, in miniature. When Zoe also opened her eyes later that day, revealing identical green irises, Jasmine felt a complex wave of emotions. Pride in these beautiful features, pain at the reminder of the man who'd rejected them, determination that these girls would never know that rejection firsthand. "Your father didn't want us," she whispered to her sleeping daughters that night. "But I want you more than anything in this world, and one day he'll see what he threw away." For the next 6 weeks, Jasmine lived in the hospital's parent room, leaving only for quick showers and to check in at the shelter to maintain her bed. The social worker helped secure emergency benefits and started the paperwork for subsidized housing. During the endless hours beside the incubators, Jasmine continued her education, typing code one-handed on her laptop while holding a bottle with the other. Zoe came home first, reaching 4 pounds while her sister struggled with breathing issues. Jasmine transformed her shelter bed into a makeshift nursery, using plastic storage bins as cribs. 2 weeks later, Zoe joined them, still attached to an apnea monitor that beeped terrifyingly in the night. With 2 preemie babies requiring round-the-clock care, returning to work seemed impossible. The social worker helped Jasmine apply for temporary assistance and put her on waiting lists for childcare vouchers and housing programs with years-long queues. Their shelter time was extended on compassionate grounds, but it couldn't last forever. "I need to earn money," Jasmine told Mrs. Jackson 3 months after the twins' birth. "But I can't leave them with just anyone. They're still so fragile." "What about your mother?" Mrs. Jackson asked gently. Jasmine shook her head. Her one call to her mother after the birth had been brief and painful. "You made your choices," her mother had said, "just like I made mine." By the time the twins were 6 months old, Jasmine had pieced together a precarious existence. Mornings, she worked data entry for a small accounting firm that allowed her to bring the babies in a second-hand double stroller. Evenings and weekends, she took online surveys and product testing jobs that paid pennies but could be done while the twins slept. Every spare dollar went into a separate account labeled Future, which she refused to touch even when formula ran low or diapers ran out. Those emergencies she handled by selling plasma twice monthly, ignoring the lightheadedness that followed. By their first birthday, celebrated with dollar store candles stuck in a muffin, Zoe and Zoe were catching up developmentally. Zoe, the quieter twin, watched everything with solemn concentration. Zoe, 7 minutes older, babbled constantly and reached for anything in grabbing distance. That night, after finally getting them to sleep in the tiny studio apartment she'd secured through a church program, Jasmine collapsed on her pull-out couch. Exhaustion weighed on her like a physical presence. She'd managed to complete several online coding certificates during the past year, studying while the twins napped or after they went to bed, often getting only 3 or 4 hours of sleep herself. Opening her worn notebook, she reviewed her latest project idea, an efficient digital system for tracking inventory that she hoped might interest local businesses. The page blurred before her eyes as fatigue overtook her. She turned to a fresh page, intending to sketch a user interface, but found herself drawing something entirely different. Diagrams of solar panels, battery configurations, energy flow calculations remembered from physics classes. An idea was forming, something about energy storage, about capturing and maintaining power more efficiently than current systems. The parallel to her own life wasn't lost on her, storing energy during brief opportunities to power through the long, demanding hours. She worked feverishly, forgetting her exhaustion, sketching crude diagrams and writing equations until Zoe's cry interrupted her at 3 a.m. As she prepared a bottle, she glanced back at her notebook, suddenly certain that those sleep-deprived scribbles contained something important. In the dim light of their small kitchen, rocking Zoe while Zoe slept on, Jasmine felt a spark of hope brighter than any she'd experienced since before that fateful meeting at the Galleria Cafe. This idea could be something that might transform not just her life, but energy systems worldwide. "We're going to make it," she whispered to Zoe, whose green eyes, so like her father's yet filled with innocent trust rather than cold calculation, were already drifting closed again. "And one day, those eyes of yours will look out from magazine covers and graduation stages. Those scribbles made at 3 in the morning on a cheap notebook with a chewed pencil would transform into the patent that, in 10 years, companies like Tesla, Google, and NASA would compete for at astronomical prices." Jasmine stared at the notebook, her vision blurring from exhaustion. Those energy storage calculations might be onto something revolutionary, but right now her more immediate concern was keeping a roof over her daughters' heads. She closed the notebook, tucking it carefully into her bag. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new possibilities. The twins had just turned 2, their matching birthday outfits, second-hand but carefully pressed, hanging in the tiny closet of their studio apartment. In the 2 years since their premature birth, Jasmine had constructed a fragile ecosystem of childcare, work, and study that threatened to collapse if any single element failed. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains as Jasmine prepared for another day. Zoe had woken first, as usual, chattering to her stuffed elephant while Zoe still slept, curled around her favorite blanket. "Mama work?" Zoe asked, her vocabulary expanding daily. "Yes, baby. Mama has to work." Jasmine smoothed her daughter's curls. "But tonight we'll read the Star Book again, okay?" "Star Book!" Zoe clapped, making Zoe stir and blink awake, her identical green eyes focusing more slowly than her sister's. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Garcia, their elderly neighbor who watched the girls 3 days a week in exchange for Jasmine handling her grocery shopping and cleaning. The arrangement was a godsend, but far from stable. Mrs. Garcia's health was declining, and Jasmine dreaded the day she could no longer help. By 7:30, Jasmine had dropped the twins with Mrs. Garcia and was rushing to catch the bus to Microsystems Inc., the small software company that had taken a chance on her 6 months ago. The position was entry-level, paying barely above minimum wage, but it represented her first foothold in the tech world she was determined to conquer. "Williams, conference room in 5, barked Steve, her supervisor, as she hurried through the door. The Johnson account system crashed again. Jasmine nodded, stowing her bag at her cubicle. Her day-to-day work involved basic coding and troubleshooting for small business clients, nothing groundbreaking, but she absorbed every bit of knowledge like a sponge, staying late whenever Mrs. Garcia could accommodate. The company's informal atmosphere had one unexpected benefit. On days when childcare fell through, no one objected to the twins quietly playing in an unused storage room. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but it had saved Jasmine's job more than once when Mrs. Garcia had doctor's appointments or her other backup plans collapsed. That evening, Mrs. Garcia's son called to say his mother was experiencing chest pains. Jasmine left work immediately to collect the twins, then spent 3 anxious hours in the emergency room waiting area, the girls coloring quietly on the floor beside her chair. "She'll be okay," the doctor finally reported, "but she needs rest. No childcare for at least 2 weeks." Jasmine's stomach nodded. 2 weeks without her primary childcare meant 2 weeks without work, which meant no rent money. The precarious balance of her life tilted dangerously. "I'll bring them with me," she told her supervisor the next morning, standing in his office with the twins holding her hands. "They're quiet, and I can set them up in the storage room with their books and toys." Steve frowned, scratching his beard. "Company policy says—" "Please," Jasmine interrupted, lowering her voice so the girls wouldn't hear the desperation. "I've never missed a deadline. I'll work through lunch. I'll stay late when I can arrange evening care, just until Mrs. Garcia recovers." Something in her face must have conveyed the stakes because Steve sighed and nodded. 2 weeks, Williams. and they stay in the storage room during client meetings. For the next 2 weeks, Jasmine's days blurred into an exhausting routine. She arrived early to set up the twins' play area, worked through lunch to compensate for the interruptions to feed and check on them, and stayed late whenever her neighbor's teenage daughter could babysit. The arrangement caught the attention of Daniel Chen, one of the senior programmers who often worked late. On the third evening, he paused by her cubicle. "Your code for the Peterson project was elegant," he commented. "Where did you learn to program?" "Self-taught, mostly," Jasmine replied, surprised by the compliment. "Online courses and library books when I could get them?" Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "And those are your daughters? In the storage room?" Jasmine tensed, anticipating criticism. "Yes, my regular childcare is unavailable right now. They're no trouble." "They're reading," Daniel interrupted. The little one was sounding out words in a book that seems advanced for her age. "Zoe taught herself to read," Jasmine explained, pride momentarily displacing her anxiety. "She's only 2, but she's already reading at a first-grade level. Zoe is more social. She talks to everyone, even strangers, which terrifies me sometimes." Daniel smiled. "My wife runs a weekend coding camp for kids. She's always saying the younger they start, the more intuitive it becomes. Your daughters might enjoy it." "That sounds wonderful, but—" Jasmine hesitated, embarrassed. "I couldn't afford something like that right now." "She's always looking for assistance," Daniel said casually. "People who can help the kids when they get stuck. It pays pretty well for weekend work, and your daughters could attend for free." 2 days later, Jasmine sat in a bright classroom at the community center, watching as Daniel's wife May demonstrated basic programming concepts to a group of elementary school children. In the corner, the twins played with special coding toys designed for preschoolers. "You have a natural way of explaining complex concepts," May told her afterward. "The kids responded well to you. Can you start this weekend? 3 hours on Saturday mornings?" The additional income helped stabilize Jasmine's budget, but more importantly, it expanded her network. Through May, she met other programmers, including several working mothers who shared childcare hacks and job leads. One recommended a preschool with income-based tuition that had a STEM focus. Another passed along information about a Women in Tech scholarship. By the time the twins turned 3, Jasmine had been promoted to junior developer at Microsystems and had enrolled in online courses to complete her computer science degree. The twins attended the STEM preschool 3 mornings a week, thriving in the structured environment. Their vocabulary and problem-solving skills impressed teachers who often asked Jasmine what enrichment programs the girls attended, not realizing that necessity, not privilege, had shaped their development. "Mama, look!" Zoe exclaimed one evening, proudly showing a paper robot she'd constructed at school. "It moves when you pull this." "And I made a computer," Zoe added quietly, holding up a cardboard creation covered in drawn buttons. Jasmine hugged them both, marveling at how quickly they were growing, how their personalities were diverging despite their identical appearance. Zoe, outgoing and demonstrative, made friends instantly. Zoe, thoughtful and methodical, observed extensively before engaging. Their tiny apartment overflowed with books and makeshift science projects, many salvaged from thrift stores or constructed from recycled materials. Money remained tight, but Jasmine had established enough stability to occasionally indulge in small luxuries, a new book instead of a library loan, ice cream on Friday evenings, matching outfits for special occasions. On a rare Sunday off, Jasmine took the twins to Herman Park, spreading a blanket under a tree while they explored nearby. Opening her notebook, she returned to the energy storage concept that had been evolving in her mind for months. Between coding projects at work and caring for the twins, she'd had little time to develop it, but the idea wouldn't release its hold on her imagination. "What are you drawing?" asked a voice, startling her. Jasmine looked up to find an older African-American man watching her sketch with curious eyes. "Just an idea," she replied, instinctively covering the page. Ideas were precious. They could be stolen. The man chuckled. Looks like an energy storage configuration, though not like any I've seen before. I'm Walter Montgomery. I teach engineering at Rice University. Jasmine hesitated, then extended her hand. Jasmine Williams. I work at Microsystems as a junior developer. And these are... He gestured toward the twins who had returned to the blanket clutching leaves they'd collected. My daughters, Zoe and Zoe. Walter smiled at the girls, who responded with varying levels of enthusiasm. Zoe immediately showing him her leaf collection, Zoe hanging back to assess this stranger. Your diagrams are intriguing, Walter continued, gesturing toward her notebook, particularly the efficiency calculations. Have you run simulations? Not yet, Jasmine admitted. I don't have access to the necessary software. The university has excellent simulation programs, Walter said casually. I have lab time on Wednesday evenings. You'd be welcome to use the equipment if you're interested. Jasmine stared at him, searching for the catch. Why would you offer that to someone you just met? Walter's eyes crinkled. Because 20 years ago, another engineer spotted me working on calculations in a park and offered similar help. Now it's my turn to pass it forward. The following Wednesday marked the beginning of a transformation. While the twins played with educational apps on a tablet, supervised by Walter's teaching assistant, Jasmine ran the first simulations of her energy storage concept. The results exceeded even her optimistic predictions. This is remarkable, Walter said, reviewing the data. The efficiency increase is substantially higher than current market solutions. Is it enough to be commercially viable? Jasmine asked. Walter nodded slowly. With refinement, absolutely, but patents are expensive, and developing a prototype even more so. Over the following months, Walter became more than a mentor. He became the grandfather her daughters had never had. His wife, Catherine, a retired elementary school teacher, often volunteered to watch the twins, giving Jasmine precious hours to develop her concept into a workable patent application. You should apply to this, Walter told her one evening, sliding a brochure across his dining table. It's an incubator program for green technology startups. They provide initial funding and mentorship. Jasmine skimmed the requirements. They want established professionals with track records of success. I'm a junior developer with an unproven concept. Your simulations speak for themselves, Walter insisted, and I'm happy to serve as your technical advisor. The worst they can say is no. 3 weeks later, Jasmine stood nervously before a panel of judges in the incubator program's conference room. The twins sat quietly in the back row, coached by Catherine to draw silently during Mama's important meeting. Walter sat beside them, giving Jasmine an encouraging nod as she began her presentation. Current renewable energy systems face a critical challenge, she started, her voice steadier than she felt. Storage efficiency determines whether solar and wind can truly replace fossil fuels. My patent-pending system increases storage efficiency by 42% while reducing manufacturing costs by 27%. The questions afterward were technical and challenging, but Jasmine had prepared meticulously. When one judge asked about her qualifications, she straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly. I taught myself to code while raising premature twins alone and working 2 minimum-wage jobs, she replied evenly. I've developed this concept while completing my degree and working full-time. What I lack in formal credentials, I make up for in determination and innovative thinking. 1 week later, Jasmine received the call. Her project had been selected for the incubator program. The initial funding of $50,000 seemed astronomical, more money than she had ever imagined having at once. That evening, she took the twins out for a special dinner at an actual restaurant, not the fast food places that were their usual treat. We're celebrating, she told them, watching their eyes widen at the cloth napkins and multiple forks. Mama's idea is going to become a real product. Will we be rich? Zoe asked innocently. Jasmine smiled. Maybe someday. But more importantly, we'll help make the world better by creating clean energy solutions. As they shared a dessert too large for any of them to finish alone, Jasmine felt a sense of vindication that had been building slowly since that rainy day at the Galleria. The future remained uncertain, the path ahead still challenging, but for the first time she could see a clear route from where she stood to where she wanted to be. The check for $50,000 seemed a fortune to Jasmine that day, but she couldn't imagine that in just 6 years she would refuse an acquisition offer of $500 million, determined to build her empire her own way. The $50,000 check became seed money for what Jasmine tentatively called Williams Energy Solutions. The name felt both ambitious and terrifying on her business cards, printed at a local copy shop where she'd once made flyers for babysitting services. 4 years had passed since those twins had entered the world too early, bringing with them both challenge and purpose in equal measure. The incubator program provided not just funding but office space. A small room with 2 desks in a converted warehouse where other green startups worked on everything from biodegradable packaging to algae-based fuels. The twins, now 4 years old, were growing into distinct personalities despite their identical appearance. Jasmine's morning routine had become an intricate dance of preparation, with occasional missteps that left everyone frazzled. "Zoe, please put your shoes on. We're already late," Jasmine urged, tucking a lunchbox into a backpack while simultaneously checking email on her phone. A potential component supplier had promised pricing information by morning. "Don't want shoes," Zoe declared, crossing her arms with the particular stubbornness that Jasmine secretly admired even as it frustrated her. Zoe, already dressed and waiting by the door, looked up from her picture book. "Zoe, if you wear shoes, I'll let you have my animal crackers at snack time." Jasmine bit back a smile as Zoe immediately reconsidered, reaching for her sandals. Zoe's quiet problem-solving skills never ceased to amaze her. At 4, she was already reading at a second-grade level and approached conflicts with careful strategy rather than emotion. The preschool drop-off went smoothly, but traffic ensured Jasmine arrived at the incubator 15 minutes late, hurrying past other entrepreneurs to reach her desk. Her new hire, a recent engineering graduate named Luis, who'd accepted low pay in exchange for equity, was already sketching component designs. "Morning," he greeted without looking up. "The simulation results came back. Your efficiency calculations were conservative. We're actually looking at 47% improvement over market standards." Jasmine set down her coffee, excitement momentarily displacing her morning stress. "Are you serious? Let me see." The day dissolved into technical discussions, component sourcing calls, and the endless paperwork of a startup finding its footing. At 3:30, Jasmine checked her watch and grimaced. "I need to pick up the girls," she explained, gathering her notes. "Can you compile these test results for tomorrow's advisor meeting?" Luis nodded, already familiar with her schedule. Walter had recommended him specifically for his technical skills and, equally important, his understanding that Jasmine's role as a mother couldn't be separated from her role as a founder. As she rushed toward her car, her phone rang. Mrs. Patel, the twins' preschool teacher, spoke quickly. "Ms. Williams, I'm so sorry, but Zoe has a fever. School policy requires she be picked up immediately." Jasmine's carefully constructed schedule collapsed. The advisor meeting tomorrow was crucial. Potential investors would be present. She couldn't miss it, nor could she bring a sick child. "I'll be right there," she promised, mentally calculating childcare possibilities. Mrs. Garcia had moved to live with her son. Catherine was visiting her sister in Louisiana. The backup babysitter was a college student with classes all day. When she arrived at the preschool, Zoe sat curled in a chair in the office, her usually alert eyes glazed with fever. Zoe hovered protectively beside her, unusually subdued. "Mama," Zoe whispered, reaching up. "I don't feel good." Jasmine gathered her daughter in her arms, feeling the heat radiating through the small body. "I know, baby. We're going home right now." That evening, with Zoe's fever hovering at 102 degrees despite medication, Jasmine made desperate calls while balancing her laptop on her knees, finalizing presentation slides. Walter answered on the third ring. "The twins are sick," Jasmine explained without preamble. "I have the investor meeting tomorrow. Catherine's out of town. Bring your presentation materials to my house," Walter interrupted calmly. "We'll review everything tonight, and I'll present tomorrow if necessary." Gratitude washed over her. "Walter, I can't ask you to—" "You didn't ask. I offered," he replied with the gentle firmness that had characterized their relationship since that day in the park. "These investors need to see your innovation, whether you're physically present or not." 2 hours later, the twins slept in Walter's guest bedroom while Jasmine and Walter finalized the presentation in his study. Catherine might be away, but Walter proved surprisingly adept at offering cool washcloths and children's fever reducer between technical discussions. "You've become quite the grandfather," Jasmine observed, watching him check on the girls with practiced ease. Walter's expression softened. "Catherine and I couldn't have children. Her health problems started early. When we met you and the twins, well, sometimes families find each other in unexpected ways." The next morning, Zoe's fever broke, but Jasmine still arranged to work from Walter's home. She watched the investor meeting via video call, heart pounding as Walter presented her technology with the enthusiasm and expertise of someone who believed in it completely. "And the inventor herself is available to answer technical questions," Walter concluded, turning the laptop to face the investors. For 40 minutes, Jasmine fielded complex questions about energy density, manufacturing scalability, and market applications. When one investor, a silver-haired man with an expensive watch similar to the one Nathan had worn, asked pointedly about her credentials, Walter intervened. "Ms. Williams solved an efficiency problem that has stumped researchers at major universities," he stated firmly. "Her lack of formal credentials is precisely why she approached the problem differently. Sometimes innovation requires fresh perspectives unencumbered by traditional thinking." The investor nodded slowly, reassessing Jasmine with new respect. That evening, after returning to their small apartment with the recovering twins, Jasmine received an email that changed everything. The incubator program had secured a provisional patent for her technology and arranged a meeting with a mid-sized solar company interested in licensing it for commercial applications. "We did it," she whispered to the sleeping twins. "We really did it." Over the next 6 months, Jasmine's technology attracted increasing attention. The solar company's implementation proved successful in field tests, generating interest from larger corporations. Williams Energy Solutions grew to 5 employees, requiring a move to larger offices. Jasmine hired a part-time administrative assistant who was also a mother, creating a workspace where children occasionally appeared without causing disruption. As the twins turned 5, Jasmine faced a critical decision: kindergarten registration. Their neighborhood school had poor test scores and limited resources. Private schools cost more than her still precarious finances could manage. Walter suggested an alternative. "There's a magnet school for gifted children," he explained during one of their weekly dinners at his home. "Both girls would qualify easily, based on their abilities." Jasmine hesitated. The application process is competitive, and those schools are usually in wealthy neighborhoods. "Which is precisely why children like Zoe and Zoe should have access," Catherine interjected. "I'll help with the applications. They deserve every opportunity." With Catherine's guidance, both girls were accepted into the prestigious program. Their first day of kindergarten, dressed in carefully chosen outfits that Jasmine had saved for weeks to purchase, marked another milestone in their journey away from poverty. While the twins flourished academically, Jasmine's professional life reached a turning point. An executive from Helios Technologies, a mid-sized renewable energy company, expressed interest not just in licensing her patent, but in hiring her directly. "Your innovation is exactly what we've been searching for," Marcus Turner explained during their meeting. "We want to offer you a senior engineering position with resources to develop your technology further." The salary he mentioned was 4 times what Jasmine currently paid herself. The benefits included comprehensive health care, retirement matching, and even child care assistance. For someone who had once slept in a bus terminal while pregnant, the offer represented unimaginable security. "I need to think about it," she responded, surprising herself. 4 years earlier, she would have accepted instantly. That night, she sat at Walter and Catherine's dining table, the offer letter between them. "It's an excellent opportunity," Walter acknowledged. "The resources alone would accelerate your technology development by years." "But?" Jasmine prompted, hearing the reservation in his voice. Walter smiled. "But you wouldn't be building something of your own. You'd be building something for them." "Is that so wrong?" Jasmine asked, thinking of the stability the position would provide. "The twins deserve security." Catherine reached across the table, covering Jasmine's hand with her own. "The twins deserve to see their mother achieve her full potential. They're watching you, learning what's possible." After a sleepless night weighing options, Jasmine declined the Helios offer. Instead, she proposed a partnership. Williams Energy Solutions would remain independent, with Helios receiving preferred licensing terms for her current and future innovations. Marcus was visibly surprised by her counter-proposal. "Most startups at your stage jump at acquisition offers." "I'm not most startups," Jasmine replied simply. "My vision extends beyond a single patent." The partnership with Helios provided the capital to expand significantly. By the time the twins turned 6, Williams Energy Solutions employed 15 people and had moved to proper offices in a downtown building. Jasmine could finally afford a 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood, with a small study where the girls could do homework. Walter's health began deteriorating that winter. Subtle changes at first: shortness of breath, decreased stamina, that he dismissed as normal aging. Catherine noticed first, then Jasmine, but Walter waved away their concerns. "I'm fine," he insisted after a coughing fit during one of their technical discussions. "Just a persistent cold." Jasmine knew better but respected his privacy until the day he collapsed during a demonstration for potential investors. The hospital diagnosis was grim: advanced heart failure, complicated by pneumonia. "You should have told us," Jasmine said, sitting beside his hospital bed while Catherine spoke with doctors outside. Walter's smile was weak but genuine. "And have you worry instead of revolutionizing energy storage? Not a chance." For 3 weeks, Jasmine juggled the hospital, the twins, and the business, sleeping only a few hours each night. The girls insisted on visiting Grandpa Walter daily, bringing drawings and reading their school books aloud to him. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Walter took Jasmine's hand as the twins dozed in chairs beside Catherine. "I need you to know something," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Meeting you and those beautiful girls was one of life's greatest gifts. You've become the daughter we never had." 2 days later, Walter Montgomery passed peacefully in his sleep. At his memorial service, hundreds gathered, colleagues, former students, and friends, all sharing stories of his generosity and brilliance. Jasmine stood with the twins, accepting condolences from people whose names she'd only seen in engineering journals. Several approached with business cards, impressed by Walter's descriptions of her work. "He believed in you completely," one former colleague said. "Walter told anyone who would listen that you would change the world." In the weeks following Walter's death, Jasmine made 2 significant decisions. First, she legally changed her name to Jasmine Williams Montgomery, honoring the man who had believed in her when she most needed support. Second, she renamed her company Williams Tech Innovations, reflecting her expanding vision beyond energy storage alone. The check for $50,000 seemed a fortune to Jasmine that day, but she couldn't imagine that, in just 6 years, she would refuse an acquisition offer of $500 million, determined to build her empire her own way. The small article in the Houston Chronicle celebrating the contract signing might have seemed insignificant to most readers, tucked away on page 12 of the business section, but for Jasmine, it represented a turning point: public recognition of her company's legitimacy. 3 years had passed since she'd changed her name to Williams Montgomery, honoring Walter's memory by carrying forward his legacy alongside her own. The twins had just turned 7, and Williams Tech Innovations had outgrown its incubator space. With 15 employees and the first major contract secured, Jasmine leased a modest office in a mid-tier building downtown. The space wasn't glamorous, fluorescent lighting, worn carpet, and walls that needed fresh paint, but it was hers. "We need more engineers," Louise said, spreading resumes across her desk one Monday morning. "The contract timeline is aggressive." Jasmine nodded, scanning the candidates. "This one has promising experience with energy systems. MIT graduate, worked at Tesla for 2 years." "He's asking twice what we budgeted," Louise pointed out. "Quality engineering is worth the investment," Jasmine replied, setting the resume in her interview pile. "Schedule him for Wednesday." The candidate, Daniel Reeves, arrived in an expensive suit and Italian leather shoes. His handshake was firm, his smile confident as he surveyed the modest office. "Interesting space you have here. Very startup." Something in his tone, a subtle condescension, immediately put Jasmine on alert. Throughout the interview, he directed technical questions to Louise despite Jasmine being the founder and chief engineer. When she described the patented technology, Daniel's eyebrows raised skeptically. "That's quite ambitious for such a small team," he remarked. "Have you considered bringing in more seasoned leadership to navigate the commercialization phase?" "I am the leadership," Jasmine replied evenly, maintaining her professional smile. "But I'm always looking for team members who share our vision." After Daniel left, Louise let out a low whistle. "Brilliant engineer. Terrible fit." "Agreed," Jasmine said, already reviewing the next resume. "Technical skills aren't enough. We need people who believe in what we're building, and who we're building it with." The hiring process proved challenging. Many qualified candidates expressed surprise, sometimes poorly concealed, at finding a young black woman at the helm of an energy technology company. Some, like Daniel, directed questions to Louise or other male team members. Others seemed enthusiastic until salary negotiations, when they balked at the modest compensation Jasmine could offer compared to established corporations. After a particularly frustrating interview with a candidate who suggested she focus on the creative side while bringing in someone with business experience as CEO, Jasmine closed her office door and allowed herself a moment of pure frustration, pounding her desk with a clenched fist. A knock interrupted her moment of weakness. Catherine stood in the doorway, her kind eyes taking in Jasmine's expression. She had started volunteering at the office 3 days a week, managing reception and providing the steady presence that had always been her gift. "Difficult day?" she asked, closing the door behind her. Jasmine sighed, tension draining from her shoulders. "Why is it so hard for them to see me as capable? I built this technology from nothing. I secured the patent. I negotiated the contract. Yet they look at me and see... What? An imposter?" Catherine settled into the chair opposite Jasmine's desk. "They see something that challenges their expectations. People find that uncomfortable." "Walter never looked at me that way," Jasmine said softly. "Walter was exceptional," Catherine agreed. "But he also recognized something exceptional in you." She leaned forward. "The world doesn't hand people like you opportunities, Jasmine. You have to create them for yourself." That evening, after tucking the twins into bed in their new apartment, still modest but with actual bedrooms and a small balcony where Jasmine had started an herb garden, she revisited her business plan. If traditional investors and engineers couldn't see past their biases, she would find alternative paths forward. The next morning, she called an impromptu team meeting. "We're changing our hiring approach," she announced. "Instead of competing for engineers from elite schools who expect Silicon Valley salaries, we'll create our own talent pipeline. I want to partner with community colleges and historically black universities to develop an internship program." Over the following months, Williams Tech implemented the new strategy. Their first cohort of interns included promising students overlooked by larger companies, women, people of color, first-generation college students. Jasmine personally mentored them, recognizing in their determination the same hunger that had driven her. Parallel to this effort, Jasmine reconsidered her investment strategy. After multiple meetings with venture capitalists where she faced subtle and not-so-subtle sexism and racism, she sought alternative funding sources. Through Catherine's church connections, she presented to a group of Black female entrepreneurs who had formed an angel investment collective. "Your technology isn't just innovative, it's necessary," said Dr. Maya Johnson, a retired physicist who had founded the collective. "Climate change disproportionately affects communities of color. Energy independence is environmental justice." The collective offered $1 million for a modest equity stake, less than traditional VCs might have provided, but with fewer strings attached and partners who understood her vision beyond profit margins. As the twins' 7th birthday approached, Jasmine noticed concerning comments from Zoe after school. "Madison said she can't come to our birthday party because her mom says our neighborhood isn't safe," Zoe reported, her expressive face struggling between hurt and indignation. The girls attended a prestigious elementary school on scholarship, where most classmates lived in River Oaks or Memorial, Houston's wealthiest neighborhoods. Their friends' homes featured swimming pools and playrooms larger than Jasmine's entire apartment. "Some people judge places they've never even visited," Jasmine explained carefully. "We can have the party at the Children's Museum instead if you'd prefer." Zoe, listening quietly as always, looked up from her book. "I don't want friends who don't want to come to our real home." Jasmine felt a surge of pride mixed with concern. At 7, the twins were already navigating complex social dynamics tied to class and race, developing their own responses to exclusion. The birthday party ultimately happened at the Children's Museum, a compromise Jasmine made not for Madison's mother, but for her daughter's happiness. As she watched them laughing with friends among the interactive exhibits, she made a silent promise. Their next birthday would be celebrated in a home worthy of their brightness. Summer brought a pivotal moment for Williams Tech. Their first commercial installation, an energy storage system for a small solar farm outside Austin, performed even better than projected, attracting attention from larger potential clients. A reporter from a regional technology blog requested an interview, resulting in a feature article titled "Houston's Hidden Gem: How a Single Mother Built a Green Energy Breakthrough." The article circulated widely among industry insiders, bringing unexpected attention. Jasmine's inbox filled with meeting requests from companies she had previously struggled to access. The contrast wasn't lost on her. The same technology that had been questioned when presented by her directly was suddenly revolutionary when validated by external coverage. Rather than bitter, the experience left her strategic. Jasmine hired a public relations consultant, focusing on placing stories that highlighted both her innovation and her journey. Each feature led to more interest, more meetings, more opportunities to demonstrate her expertise. "The Carson Group wants to meet next week," Luis announced, excitement evident in his voice. "They're the largest energy investment firm in Texas." The meeting was scheduled for the same day as Zoe's science presentation at school. Jasmine had promised to attend after missing Zoe's debate competition the previous month due to a client emergency. The conflict tore at her. The Carson Group could transform Williams Tech's trajectory, but her daughter's disappointed face haunted her. "Reschedule," she finally told Luis. "They specifically said their schedule is tight. Then they can meet with our technical team first, and I'll join for the second half after my daughter's presentation," Jasmine insisted. "I won't miss another school event." On presentation day, Jasmine sat proudly in the school auditorium as Zoe explained her project on solar panel efficiency with remarkable clarity for a 7-year-old. From the back row, Jasmine slipped out immediately after Zoe's presentation, racing downtown for the Carson meeting. She arrived slightly breathless, entering the conference room where Luis and their chief technology officer were deep in technical discussions with 3 Carson executives. "Ms. Williams-Montgomery," said the lead investor, rising to shake her hand, "your team has been impressing us with your storage solution." The meeting progressed promisingly until one executive, A silver-haired man with a Texas A&M ring leaned back in his chair. "I'll be direct. We're impressed with the technology but concerned about leadership experience. Have you considered bringing on a CEO with industry connections? Someone who could be the face of the company while you focus on the technical side?" The suggestion, though familiar, still stung. Jasmine maintained her professional smile, constructed through years of practice. "I appreciate your concern, but Williams Tech's technical innovation and company culture are inseparable. I am both the inventor and the leader. That's our competitive advantage." The executive exchanged glances with his colleagues. "The energy sector is traditionally conservative. Some potential clients might be more comfortable with a more conventional leadership structure." "You mean a male CEO?" Jasmine clarified, keeping her voice even. "Preferably white, preferably with an Ivy League degree and country club connections." The room went silent. The executive shifted uncomfortably. "Those clients are welcome to work with conventional companies and receive conventional results," Jasmine continued. "But those seeking truly innovative solutions will find us. Already are finding us." She opened her tablet, displaying their growing client list. "Our technology speaks for itself, and I speak for our technology. That package is non-negotiable." After the meeting, Luis appeared at her office door. "That was bold." "That was necessary," Jasmine replied. "We'll find investors who value what we're building, not just who's building it." 3 weeks later, a smaller investment firm with a focus on clean energy and diverse leadership offered Williams Tech $5 million for a 15% stake, terms far more favorable than Carson had discussed. The investment allowed Jasmine to hire key personnel, upgrade their manufacturing partnerships, and finally move the company to proper offices in a newer building. The space featured large windows, a small laboratory for ongoing development, and a dedicated area where employees' children could stay after school when necessary, a feature Jasmine insisted on including. The fall brought another milestone. Jasmine purchased her first home, a modest 3-bedroom in a safe neighborhood with good schools. The twins each had their own room decorated to their distinct personalities. Zoe's vibrant with posters of women scientists and social activists. Zoe's serene with bookshelves and a small desk for her increasingly sophisticated projects. The small article in the Houston Chronicle would be the first of hundreds about Jasmine Williams Montgomery, but none would be as significant as the Forbes cover story 5 years later, which Nathan Reynolds would read with growing incredulity, finally recognizing what he had discarded. The Forbes cover story would indeed prove transformative for Jasmine's company, but the path there was paved with choices both professional and personal that tested her resolve daily. The twins had just celebrated their 10th birthday with a party at their modest but comfortable home, a far cry from the shelter where they had spent their first birthday. Zoe and Zoe were flourishing at the prestigious magnet school, their distinct personalities becoming more pronounced with each passing year. Jasmine checked her watch and winced. Zoe's science presentation was starting in 20 minutes, and she was still trapped in the Williams Tech conference room with potential investors from Germany. "I apologize, but I need to conclude our meeting," she said, gathering her materials with practiced efficiency. "My daughter has an important school presentation." The lead investor, a silver-haired man with rimless glasses, looked surprised. "But we haven't discussed the expansion timeline." "My team will provide all the details this afternoon," Jasmine replied, already moving toward the door. "Family commitments are non-negotiable at Williams Tech, for me and for all our employees." She managed to slip into the school auditorium just as Zoe's class was being called to the stage. From the back row, Jasmine watched her daughter, small for her age, serious-faced behind wire-rimmed glasses, explain quantum entanglement with the clarity and precision that continually astonished her teachers. When Zoe finished, the scattered applause from parents was joined by enthusiastic cheering from the front row, where Zoe stood up, clapping wildly for her twin. As the presentation concluded, Jasmine made her way toward the stage, only to see Zoe's face fall when she spotted her mother. You missed most of it, Zoe said quietly as they walked to the car. I saw your explanation of quantum entanglement, Jasmine countered, guilt gnawing at her. You were brilliant. She practiced for weeks, Zoe added, uncharacteristically solemn. She wanted you to see all of it. The car ride home was silent, punctuated only by Jasmine's attempts at conversation that fell flat against the twins' unified disappointment. At 10, they were old enough to understand her work's importance, but young enough to measure love in time spent, not opportunities provided. That evening, after homework and dinner, Zoe approached Jasmine in the kitchen. Can I ask you something? Always, Jasmine replied, setting aside the quarterly reports she'd been reviewing. Why don't we ever talk about our father? The question, though long anticipated, still caught Jasmine off guard. She had always known this conversation would come, had rehearsed versions of it in her mind for years, but nothing prepared her for the directness in Zoe's eyes, so like her own in determination, but green like Nathan's. Where's this coming from? Jasmine asked, buying time. Career day is next month. Madison's dad is a surgeon. Ava has 2 moms who are both lawyers. Tyler's parents are divorced, but his dad still comes to everything. Zoe looked down at her hands. Everyone has someone except us. Zoe appeared in the doorway, silent as always when emotional topics arose, but clearly listening. Jasmine took a deep breath. Your father wasn't ready to be a parent when I told him I was pregnant. He made the choice not to be part of our lives. Did you love him? Zoe asked quietly. I thought I did, Jasmine answered honestly. He was charming and exciting, and I was very young. Does he know about us? Zoe pressed. He knows you exist, Jasmine said carefully, unwilling to burden them with the cruelty of Nathan's rejection. He chose not to be involved. What's his name? Zoe asked, surprising Jasmine with her practical approach. Jasmine hesitated before answering. Nathan Reynolds. His family owns an oil company here in Houston. Reynolds Oil? Zoe's eyes widened. They came to our school for the career fair last year? They have those commercials about powering Texas families? The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine. Yes, that's them. So we're Reynoldses too? Zoe asked. No, Jasmine said firmly. You're Williams Montgomerys. You carry the names of people who chose you, who built something meaningful with determination and integrity. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Jasmine found herself searching Nathan's name online, something she hadn't done in years. The search returned recent news articles about Reynolds Oil facing environmental fines after a significant oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. There was Nathan, standing at a podium, promising reforms and responsibility. The years had added sophistication to his appearance, subtle gray at his temples, lines of authority around his mouth. But his eyes remained the same cold green that haunted her daughters' faces with a warmth he had never possessed. According to the articles, Nathan had been promoted to executive vice president 2 years earlier, following his marriage to Caroline Winthrop, daughter of another oil dynasty. They had a son, age 4. The perfect oil prince for the Reynolds kingdom. Jasmine closed her laptop, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her. She had built something meaningful from nothing, while Nathan had merely stepped into a role created for him generations ago. Yet his company was valued at billions, while Williams Tech, despite its growth, remained relatively small in comparison. The following week brought another missed school event when an emergency with their largest client required Jasmine's immediate attention. Zoe's debate team had reached the state finals, and Catherine had stepped in to attend when it became clear Jasmine couldn't make it. They won, Catherine reported over the phone, her voice brimming with pride. Zoe was magnificent. The judges said her closing argument was the deciding factor. Put her on, please, Jasmine requested, ducking into an empty conference room. We're going to nationals, Zoe announced without preamble when she came on the line, excitement momentarily overriding her disappointment. I used that strategy you taught me, starting with the opponent's strongest point and turning it around. "I'm so proud of you," Jasmine said, meaning it completely while still aching at having missed the moment. "We'll celebrate this weekend. Anything you want." "Mom?" Zoe's voice dropped. "Zoe's sad you missed my debate after missing her presentation too." "I know," Jasmine acknowledged. "I'm trying to do better." That weekend, as promised, Jasmine cleared her schedule completely. They visited the Museum of Natural Science, had lunch at the twins' favorite restaurant, and spent the evening watching documentaries of Zoe's choosing. Throughout the day, Jasmine found herself studying her daughters' faces, seeing glimpses of the young women they would become. Zoe's passionate intensity when explaining why debate mattered, Zoe's quiet focus as she absorbed complex scientific concepts. The following Monday, Jasmine called an emergency meeting with her executive team. "I need structural changes," she announced. "I'm missing too many important moments with my daughters, and that's not acceptable." Luis, now Chief Operating Officer, nodded understandingly. "What are you thinking?" "A proper executive team with delegated authority. I can't be the bottleneck for every decision." Jasmine displayed the organizational chart she'd created over the weekend. "And I want to formalize our family-friendly policies. Flexible hours, remote work options, childcare support. We've been doing it ad hoc, but it needs to be codified." The changes took time to implement, but gradually created space for Jasmine to reclaim parts of her life beyond work. She made it to Zoe's next science competition and Zoe's regional debate finals. She established Wednesday dinners at Catherine's house as a non-negotiable tradition. Slowly, the tension in the twins' expressions when she made promises began to ease. Spring brought troubling news. Catherine discovered a lump during a routine mammogram. The diagnosis came quickly: stage 2 breast cancer, treatable but requiring immediate surgery and chemotherapy. "I don't want the girls to worry," Catherine insisted when Jasmine offered to explain the situation to the twins. "They're perceptive, Catherine. They'll know something's wrong." "Then tell them, but don't let them see me as a patient. I want to remain their strong grandmother figure." Jasmine respected Catherine's wishes, explaining to the twins in age-appropriate terms what cancer meant and how Catherine would be fighting it. Their reactions reflected their personalities perfectly. Zoe immediately organized a fundraising drive at school for cancer research, while Zoe disappeared into the library, emerging with medical journals and detailed questions about treatment protocols. As Catherine underwent treatment, Jasmine found herself stretched thinner than ever, managing the company's continued growth while supporting Catherine and maintaining stability for the twins. The strain showed in small ways: forgotten permission slips, missed deadlines, the dark circles that no amount of concealer could hide during morning video conferences. One evening, flipping through television channels while waiting for dinner to heat, Jasmine paused on a local news report about another Reynolds Oil environmental violation. Nathan appeared on screen, looking haggard despite his expensive suit, promising that the company was committed to environmental responsibility, despite evidence to the contrary. The camera briefly panned to a small boy fidgeting beside an elegant blonde woman at the press conference, Nathan's son and wife, she presumed. The child looked bored and uncomfortable in his miniature suit, tugging at his mother's hand while she maintained a frozen smile. "Is that him?" Zoe's voice startled Jasmine. She hadn't heard her daughter enter the room. "Yes," Jasmine admitted, seeing no reason to lie. "That's your biological father." Zoe studied the screen with clinical detachment. "He looks tired, and not very happy." "Running a big company is stressful," Jasmine replied neutrally. "You run a big company and you still smile," Zoe observed before turning away from the screen. "I prefer our family." The simple statement warmed Jasmine in ways she couldn't articulate. Summer brought both challenges and triumphs. Catherine completed her treatment, pronounced cancer-free though weakened by the ordeal. Williams Tech secured a significant contract with the Department of Energy to develop grid-scale storage solutions for wind farms in West Texas. The company now employed 80 people across 3 departments, occupying an entire floor of their office building. As the twins prepared to enter 5th grade, their final year of elementary school, Jasmine faced another pivotal decision. The private middle school that would best nurture their talents came with tuition that, while now affordable, would significantly impact her ability to reinvest in the company's growth. The girls deserve the best education possible, Luis argued during their strategy session, and we can delay the research expansion. But that expansion is crucial for our long-term viability, Jasmine countered. Without it, we risk becoming obsolete as storage technology evolves. The solution came unexpectedly during a routine doctor's appointment for Catherine. In the waiting room, Jasmine met a woman whose husband taught at Rice University. They have a laboratory middle school program for exceptional students, the woman explained. Full scholarship for qualifying children. From what you've described, your twins would be perfect candidates. Both girls qualified easily, securing spots in the prestigious program that would challenge them academically while eliminating the financial burden of private school tuition. The acceptance felt like validation of everything Jasmine had worked for. Her daughters would receive opportunities based on their merit, not limited by circumstances of birth. On the first day of the new school year, as Jasmine watched the twins walk confidently into the university-affiliated middle school, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Reynolds Oil had experienced another major spill, its stock plummeting in pre-market trading. The accompanying photo showed Nathan leaving company headquarters, his face grim, shoulders hunched beneath his tailored suit. That evening, as Jasmine helped the twins with their advanced placement homework, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was a journalist from the Houston Business Journal. "Ms. Williams Montgomery, we're doing a feature on successful energy startups founded by women. Your name keeps coming up as someone who's beaten the odds. Would you be interested in an interview?" As Jasmine scheduled the interview, watching her daughters bent over their studies at the kitchen table, she couldn't help but think about the parallel paths her life and Nathan's had taken since that rainy day at the Galleria. He had inherited an empire and was watching it crumble through mismanagement and outdated thinking. She had built something from nothing, guided by innovation and principles. The article in the Houston Business Journal would lead to others, culminating in the profile that would change everything. The Forbes cover story that Nathan Reynolds would read with growing incredulity, finally recognizing what he had carelessly discarded. The Houston Business Journal article wasn't just another feature, it became a stepping stone to national recognition. Within weeks of its publication, Jasmine received inquiries from CNBC, Bloomberg, and eventually Forbes. The energy sector had begun to take serious notice of Williams' tech innovations, now employing 200 people and occupying an architecturally striking building in Houston's emerging tech corridor. Jasmine stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her executive office, watching the Texas sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. At 31, she had achieved what most entrepreneurs only dreamed of, a valuation exceeding $500 million, with investors practically begging to be included in the next funding round. "Mom!" Zoe burst through the door without knocking, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. "We finished the presentation for the Young Entrepreneurs competition. Wait until you see what we've done with the slides." At 12, the twins were developing into remarkable young women, their identical appearances increasingly divergent in style. Zoe wore her hair in intricate braids, her school uniform personalized with colorful pins advocating various social causes. Behind her, Zoe entered more quietly, her tablet clutched to her chest, glasses perched on her nose. "The statistical analysis section is much stronger now," Zoe added, her voice soft but confident. "I incorporated the regression models we learned in advanced math." Jasmine smiled, setting aside the quarterly reports she'd been reviewing. "Show me everything," she said, clearing space on her conference table. As the twins launched into their presentation, a proposal for a mentorship program connecting girls from underprivileged neighborhoods with women in STEM fields, Jasmine felt a surge of pride that momentarily overwhelmed her exhaustion. While other 12-year-olds were focused on social media and mall trips, Her daughters were designing initiatives that could genuinely change lives. "This is impressive," she said when they finished, "especially the funding model." "Zoe figured out the cost-benefit analysis," Zoe explained, always quick to highlight her sister's contributions. "I handled the marketing strategy." Their complementary skills reminded Jasmine of a perfect circuit. Zoe's outgoing energy and persuasive abilities connected seamlessly with Zoe's analytical depth and problem-solving talent. Together, they were unstoppable. Later that evening, Catherine served dinner in her cozy dining room, a weekly tradition that had become their anchor amid increasingly hectic schedules. Now, fully recovered from cancer, Catherine had transitioned from her role at Williams Tech to focus on the foundation Jasmine had established in Walter's name, providing scholarships for minority students in engineering. "The Forbes photographer is coming tomorrow," Jasmine mentioned as she helped clear the plates. "They want shots of me at the office and also some at-home images with the girls." "Cover story?" Catherine asked, eyebrows raised. Jasmine nodded, still processing the reality herself. "Apparently I'm their Green Energy Innovator of the Year." "Grandma, can you help us pick outfits?" Zoe asked. "We want to look professional, but not stuffy." "You always look perfect," Catherine assured them, but agreed to come by in the morning to assist. After the twins went upstairs to finish homework, Jasmine sank into Catherine's comfortable sofa, momentarily allowing the exhaustion to show on her face. "You're pushing yourself too hard again," Catherine observed, settling beside her with 2 cups of tea. "The NASA proposal is due next week. If we secure that contract, it positions us perfectly for the international expansion next year." Catherine studied her for a moment. "When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Not for the company, not for the girls, just for Jasmine?" The question caught her off guard. I'm not sure." "That's what I thought," Catherine said gently. "Success is wonderful, but not at the expense of your well-being." Jasmine sipped her tea, reflecting on the relentless pace she'd maintained for years. The truth was, stopping felt dangerous, as if the momentum itself was what kept her problems at bay. "I'll think about it," she promised, though they both knew thinking wasn't the same as doing. The Forbes photo shoot the next day transformed their home into a whirlwind of lighting equipment, makeup artists, and assistants with clipboards. The photographer, a renowned portrait artist who had captured everyone from presidents to pop stars, directed Jasmine and the twins through a series of poses. "Beautiful family," he commented during a break. "The girls have your strength in their expressions." Jasmine smiled, not bothering to correct his assumption that their resemblance extended to her. The twins' emerald eyes, Nathan's unmistakable genetic imprint, had become less painful to see over the years, now simply another part of the remarkable young women they were becoming. The interview portion delved deeper than previous media coverage, exploring not just Williams Tech's technological innovations, but Jasmine's personal journey. "You've never publicly discussed the twins' father," the journalist noted, her recorder discreetly placed on the coffee table between them. "Was that a conscious decision?" "My daughter's story is theirs to share or keep private as they choose," Jasmine replied diplomatically. "What matters is that they're surrounded by people who value and support them unconditionally." Later that week, reviewing the preliminary layout of the article, Jasmine paused at a particular passage. Williams Montgomery's revolutionary energy storage system may have made her wealthy, but she measures success differently. "I built this company to create solutions, not just profits," she explains. "True innovation serves a purpose beyond shareholder value." The sentiment felt accurate, but seeing it articulated so clearly made her reflect on the journey that had brought her here, from a frightened, pregnant 19-year-old to a business leader whose opinions shaped industry conversations. Across town, in the gleaming downtown headquarters of Reynolds Oil, Nathan Reynolds stared at his computer screen, his expression darkening as he reviewed the latest environmental impact report. The cleanup from their third major spill in 18 months was behind schedule and over budget. The company's stock had dropped 15% in a week, and shareholders were demanding answers. "Your father wants to see you," his assistant announced from the doorway, her tone carefully neutral. Nathan straightened his tie, a habitual gesture that did nothing to calm his nerves. At 40, he had achieved the position his father had groomed him for, but the achievement felt hollow amid mounting crises. Augustus Reynolds, 72 and still formidable despite recent health scares, didn't rise when Nathan entered his corner office. "The board is meeting tomorrow," he said without preamble. "They're questioning your leadership. We're implementing new safety protocols," Nathan began, the defense rehearsed and weak even to his own ears. "3 spills in 18 months, Augustus interrupted. "Stock down 40% from when you took over. Environmental fines that exceed our quarterly profits." He tossed a folder across the desk. "And now this. Our technology is officially obsolete." Nathan opened the folder to find a market analysis comparing traditional energy storage systems, including Reynolds Oil's subsidiary products, with newer technologies. Williams Tech Innovations featured prominently, their efficiency ratings so superior that the comparison seemed almost unfair. "They're a small company," Nathan dismissed, though something about the name nagged at his memory. "That small company just signed a contract with Toyota worth more than our entire Eastern Division's annual revenue," Augustus countered, "and their founder is on the cover of Forbes next month." Nathan closed the folder, hiding his growing unease. "What do you want me to do?" "Fix it," Augustus said simply, "or the board will find someone who can." The threat hung in the air between them, father and son locked in the familiar pattern of expectation and disappointment that had characterized their relationship for decades. That evening, Nathan arrived home to find his wife Caroline hosting a charity committee meeting in their formal living room. She acknowledged him with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes before returning to her discussion about the upcoming gala. "Where's James?" he asked when the meeting concluded, noticing the absence of their 8-year-old son. "At a play date," Caroline replied, checking her diamond watch. "The nanny will pick him up at 7. Their marriage had devolved into a carefully choreographed performance, public appearances together, separate lives at home. Nathan couldn't remember the last genuine conversation they'd shared that wasn't about social obligations or James's academic progress. He poured himself a scotch in his home office, loosening his tie as he reviewed the disastrous quarterly projections. A notification on his tablet announced the latest issue of Forbes was available in his digital subscription. Seeking any distraction from the impending board meeting, he opened it. The cover stopped him cold. A striking black woman stood confidently against a backdrop of solar panels, her expression both determined and visionary. "Jasmine Williams Montgomery, Revolutionizing Green Energy," read the headline. Nathan stared, a distant memory stirring. The name was familiar, but he couldn't immediately place it. He began reading the article, his scotch forgotten as details emerged. Her pioneering work in energy storage, the company she'd built from nothing, her twin daughters, now 12, twins, 12 years old. His heart rate accelerated as he scrolled frantically to find photos of the girls. There they were, standing beside their mother in a tastefully decorated living room, their faces bright with intelligence and confidence. And their eyes, unmistakable emerald green, the distinctive Reynolds genetic trait that appeared in every generation. Nathan enlarged the image, his hands shaking slightly. The resemblance was undeniable. These poised young women, described in the article as prodigies in their own right, were his daughters. The daughters he had denied, dismissed with an envelope of cash and cruel words 13 years ago. "Who are you looking at?" Caroline's voice made him start. She had entered his office silently, a glass of white wine in hand. "No one," he answered too quickly, closing the tablet. "Just research on a competitor." Caroline's perfectly maintained eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't press. Their marriage had long ago established boundaries around uncomfortable truths. Later that night, unable to sleep, Nathan reopened the article, absorbing every detail about the life Jasmine had built. Williams Tech Innovations wasn't just successful, it was revolutionary. positioning itself at the forefront of green energy storage solutions that made traditional systems like those produced by Reynolds Oil subsidiaries increasingly irrelevant. The irony wasn't lost on him. The woman he had once dismissed as insignificant had created technology that threatened to render his family's century-old business obsolete. The twins he had rejected as an inconvenience were now celebrated as brilliant young minds with unlimited potential. His son James slept down the hall, a child he barely knew despite living under the same roof. His marriage existed on paper and in public appearances only. His company teetered on the edge of obsolescence, environmental disasters undermining both finances and reputation. Meanwhile, Jasmine Williams Montgomery graced the cover of Forbes, her innovation lauded as the future of energy storage, her daughters flourishing under her guidance. The contrast was stark and damning. Nathan closed the tablet and stared at the ceiling, a terrible understanding dawning. He had inherited an empire and watched it crumble through his own mismanagement and outdated thinking. Jasmine had built something from nothing, guided by innovation and principles he had never valued until they threatened his position. The small article in the Houston Business Journal would lead to others, culminating in the profile that would change everything. The Forbes cover story that Nathan Reynolds would read with growing incredulity, finally recognizing what he had carelessly discarded. The Forbes cover story sent ripples through Houston's business community. Jasmine's phone hadn't stopped buzzing with congratulatory messages and partnership inquiries since the issue hit newsstands. Despite the external validation, she remained focused on what truly mattered: the upcoming NASA proposal and the Entrepreneur of the Year ceremony that evening. "The red Valentino or the blue Armani?" Jasmine asked, holding up two gowns as Catherine considered them thoughtfully. "The red," Catherine decided. "It commands attention, perfect for tonight's honoree." Jasmine smiled, remembering the days when her entire wardrobe could fit in a single duffel bag. Now her walk-in closet housed designer pieces that would have seemed like impossible luxuries to her younger self. Success had brought security and comfort, but the greatest luxury remained the freedom to make choices on her own terms. In their adjoining rooms, Zoe and Zoe prepared for the evening with the careful deliberation of young women who understood the importance of presentation. At 14, they had grown into poised, articulate teenagers who moved confidently between the privileged world of their school and the diverse environment Jasmine had ensured remained central to their lives. "Do you think there will be press?" Zoe asked, applying a tasteful amount of lip gloss. She had recently been featured in Houston Youth Leader magazine for her foundation that provided STEM opportunities to girls in underserved communities. "Definitely," Zoe replied, adjusting her glasses. "The Chamber of Commerce always attracts major coverage." Unlike her sister, Zoe preferred to stay out of the spotlight, though her recently published paper on quantum computing applications had attracted attention from universities nationwide. Downstairs, Jasmine's executive assistant reviewed last-minute details. "Your speech is loaded in the teleprompter. The governor confirmed he'll attend the private reception afterward, and the NASA team requested a breakfast meeting tomorrow to discuss the lunar station proposal." "Push the NASA meeting to lunch," Jasmine replied. "I promised the girls I'd attend their science symposium presentation tomorrow morning." The drive to the Hilton Americas Houston took them through downtown, the city skyline glittering against the early evening sky. The twins chatted animatedly in the back seat while Jasmine mentally rehearsed key points of her acceptance speech. Tonight represented more than individual recognition. It validated her vision that business success and social responsibility could coexist. Across town, in a considerably less celebratory mood, Nathan Reynolds adjusted his custom tuxedo in the mirror of his River Oaks mansion. The day had delivered another blow. The Environmental Protection Agency had announced a new investigation into the latest Gulf spill. Reynolds' oil stock had dropped another 7%, prompting an emergency board call that had lasted 3 excruciating hours. "The car is waiting," Caroline announced from the doorway, resplendent in a designer gown that cost more than most Houstonians earned in months. Her expression remained neutral, the perfect corporate wife despite the growing distance between them. "We can't be late to the chamber event. The board members will be watching." Nathan nodded grimly. The Chamber of Commerce Gala had once been a victory lap for Reynolds Oil executives, a celebration of their dominance in Houston's economy. Now it felt like a gauntlet to be run, with shareholders and competitors watching for any sign of weakness. "Is James ready?" he asked, reaching for his platinum cufflinks. "James is staying home. The nanny thought it best after his meltdown this afternoon." Nathan wanted to object, wanted to insist on seeing his son, on being a proper father, but the words died in his throat. The truth was, he barely knew how to talk to the 8-year-old who viewed him as a stranger who occasionally appeared at bedtime. The grand ballroom of the Hilton Americas Houston glittered with Houston's elite. Energy executives mingled with tech entrepreneurs, bankers chatted with real estate developers, and politicians moved seamlessly between competing donor groups. Crystal chandeliers cast a flattering glow over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements, each place setting meticulously prepared for the $500-a-plate dinner. Jasmine entered with the twins and Catherine, immediately drawing attention. The red Valentino was a statement, not just of success, but of confidence. Several executives approached immediately, eager to introduce themselves to the woman whose technology was revolutionizing energy storage. "Ms. Williams Montgomery, your Forbes profile was extraordinary," said the CEO of a major solar company. "We'd love to discuss potential collaborations." Jasmine engaged graciously while keeping a protective eye on the twins. Though they handled these events with remarkable poise, she remained conscious that they were still teenagers navigating an adult world. Across the room, Nathan froze mid-conversation as he spotted Jasmine. The woman from the Forbes cover was even more striking in person, her presence commanding attention without effort. A small group of executives surrounded her, their body language revealing genuine respect rather than the patronizing tolerance often afforded to women in such settings. "Nathan, are you listening?" Caroline prompted, following his gaze. "Ah, the famous Ms. Williams Montgomery. Perhaps we should introduce ourselves. Her technology could be relevant to our diversification strategy." Before Nathan could object, a server approached with a message that the Reynolds Oil table was ready. They moved toward their assigned seating, which offered a clear view of the stage but, mercifully, was positioned far from Jasmine's table. Throughout the appetizer course, Nathan found his attention repeatedly drawn to Jasmine and the teenagers seated beside her. The girls were unmistakably twins, their poised demeanor suggesting maturity beyond their years. And those eyes, even from a distance, their distinctive color haunted him with certainty about what he had abandoned. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chamber president announced as dessert was being served, "it's time for our main presentation. Each year we honor an individual who exemplifies the innovation, determination, and vision that drives Houston's economy forward." Nathan absently checked his phone, grimacing at another alert about falling stock prices. When he looked up, the chamber president was introducing the honoree. "Our Entrepreneur of the Year has revolutionized energy storage technology, making renewable energy viable on a scale previously thought impossible. Her company employs over 200 Houstonians and recently secured a NASA contract that will literally take Houston innovation to the moon." The room erupted in applause as Jasmine rose from her table. Nathan's water glass slipped from his suddenly numb fingers, splashing onto his Italian silk tie. Around him, conversations halted as attention focused on the stage. "Please welcome Jasmine Williams Montgomery, founder and CEO of Williams Tech Innovations." The applause intensified as Jasmine approached the podium, her red dress catching the spotlight. Nathan stared, transfixed by the confident woman addressing the room, so different from the tearful, frightened girl he had dismissed at the Galleria Cafe 15 years earlier. "Thank you for this tremendous honor," Jasmine began, her voice strong and measured. "When I founded Williams Tech, Many experts told me my goals were impossible, that someone with my background couldn't succeed in this industry. Her smile contained no bitterness, only quiet triumph. Fortunately, determination doesn't require permission. Nathan barely breathed as she continued, each word striking him with the force of delayed recognition. This accomplished woman, this innovative leader, was the same person he had called insignificant and without value. I dedicate this award to my extraordinary daughters, Zoe and Zoe, Jasmine continued, her expression softening as she looked toward their table. They've taught me that our value isn't determined by the judgment of others, but by the strength we find within ourselves when facing adversity. The twins stood to applause, their expressions mirror images of pride. Nathan's heart constricted painfully as he studied their faces, the shape of their smiles, the intelligent gleam in their eyes. They were Reynolds through and through, carrying his features with a grace and warmth he had never possessed. As Jasmine concluded her speech to enthusiastic applause, Nathan remained frozen in his chair. Caroline was watching him with narrowed eyes, clearly noting his unusual reaction. "Are you ill?" she whispered as the ceremony continued with lesser awards. "You've gone completely pale." "I'm fine," he managed, loosening his tie. "Just concerned about tomorrow's board meeting." The formal program concluded, transitioning to the networking reception that represented the event's true purpose. Nathan moved mechanically through expected conversations, his attention constantly drifting to where Jasmine stood surrounded by admirers. "Reynolds," called a former business associate, "have you met Williams Montgomery yet? Her storage technology could be exactly what your offshore operations need after the latest unpleasantness." Before Nathan could formulate an excuse, he found himself being guided toward the very woman he both needed to avoid and felt inexplicably drawn toward. Jasmine was engaged in conversation with executives from SpaceX, discussing integration of her technology into their next-generation spacecraft. "Jasmine," his voice emerged weaker than intended, nearly lost in the ambient noise of the reception. She turned slowly, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly as recognition dawned. For the briefest moment, Nathan glimpsed the vulnerable young woman he had wounded so deeply, but that flash of memory was quickly replaced by composed professionalism. "Nathan Reynolds," she acknowledged, her tone betraying nothing to the observers around them. What a surprise! The SpaceX CEO glanced between them curiously. "You two know each other?" The question hung awkwardly as Nathan struggled to respond. His carefully constructed world seemed to tilt beneath his feet, past and present colliding with devastating force. Before Jasmine could answer diplomatically, Zoe approached their circle, radiant with the confidence of youth. "Mom, the governor wants to speak with you about that project in Austin." She glanced at Nathan with polite curiosity. "Sorry, are you?" The world seemed to silence around them. Nathan stared into eyes identical to his own, set in a young face that somehow combined his features with Jasmine's strength. His daughter, one of his daughters, was standing before him, unaware of their connection. "I'm an old acquaintance of your mother's," he managed, his voice barely audible. "Mr. Reynolds was just leaving," Jasmine interjected smoothly. "His company is facing some challenges, I believe. I read about the latest spill in the Gulf." The executives nearby exchanged knowing glances. Reynolds Oil's environmental disasters had become frequent topics in business circles, its once sterling reputation tarnished by repeated failures. "Could we speak privately?" Nathan asked, unable to mask the plea in his voice. Jasmine's expression remained professional, but her eyes hardened almost imperceptibly. "Everything that needed to be said between us was said 15 years ago in a cafe at the Galleria Mall," she replied, her voice low but steady. "Remember, when you told me I was insignificant and without value?" Zoe watched the exchange with increasing confusion. "Mom, is everything okay?" Nathan looked desperately between Jasmine and Zoe, then past them to where Zoe was approaching, a book clutched to her chest as always. "They're my daughters," Jasmine stated firmly. Zoe published her first scientific paper at 12. Zoe created a foundation for underprivileged girls that has already helped more than 2,000 young women. They are extraordinary in every way. "I didn't know they were twins," he murmured, the inadequacy of his response immediately apparent. "You didn't want to know anything," Jasmine countered, her composed demeanor contrasting with the weight of her words. "You said we were a problem to be solved with $5,000. The executives nearby began drifting away discreetly, sensing the intensely personal nature of the conversation. But the damage was done. Whispers already circulated through the room, connecting dots between the ambitious CEO and the struggling oil executive. Nathan attempted to regain control of the situation. "Jasmine, I was young, irresponsible. If you had known what?" she interrupted. "That I would build a billion-dollar company? That I would be on the cover of Forbes? That I would secure a contract with NASA? That my daughters would be geniuses? Would that have changed your judgment of my worth?" A heavy silence fell between them as she delivered her final assessment. "You weren't wrong about one thing. I really wasn't worthy of your last name. It was never good enough for us." While Zoe awaited an explanation, the air around them charged with 15 years of unspoken truths, and Jasmine realized that the moment she had secretly imagined for years had finally arrived. But nothing had prepared her for the impact of seeing the man who had rejected her staring at the daughters he had never known. Jasmine's final words hung in the air between them, sharp and definitive. The surrounding conversation seemed to fade as Nathan stared at her, then at the twins, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions. Zoe looked between them, her natural perceptiveness catching the undercurrents of a history she was only beginning to comprehend. "Mom," she said quietly, "what's going on?" Before Jasmine could respond, the governor's aide appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Williams-Montgomery, the governor is waiting. He's particularly interested in discussing the Austin expansion." "We'll be right there," Jasmine responded smoothly, grateful for the interruption. She turned to Nathan, her expression professionally neutral but her eyes cold. "If you'll excuse us, Mr. Reynolds, I'm sure you understand that the governor takes priority." Nathan stood frozen as Jasmine guided the twins away, his hand half raised as if to stop them but lacking the courage to make contact. Zoe, always observant, glanced back at him with a curious, evaluating look that reminded him so painfully of his own mother that he had to look away. Caroline appeared beside him, her smile fixed, but her eyes calculating. "What was that about? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Nothing," Nathan replied automatically. "Just business." "Really? Because it looked rather personal from where I was standing." Her voice dropped to ensure only he could hear. "And those girls have your eyes, Nathan. Exactly your eyes." Nathan felt his carefully constructed world cracking beneath his feet. "Not here," he muttered, reaching for another glass of scotch from a passing server. Across the ballroom, Jasmine maintained her composure through her conversation with the governor, discussing expansion plans for Williams Tech's Austin facility with articulate precision. But her mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. After 15 years of imagining this confrontation, the reality had been both more and less satisfying than she'd anticipated. When they finally extricated themselves from the conversation, Zoe pulled her mother aside, her expression demanding answers. "Mom, who was that man really? And why did he look at us like that?" Jasmine glanced at Zoe, who had joined them silently, her analytical mind clearly processing the interaction she'd witnessed. "Let's discuss this at home," Jasmine suggested. "This isn't the place." "It's him, isn't it?" Zoe asked quietly. "Our biological father." Jasmine wasn't surprised by Zoe's perception, but she hadn't expected the confrontation to happen so publicly. "Yes," she admitted, seeing no point in denying what had become obvious. "That was Nathan Reynolds." The one who said you weren't good enough?" Zoe's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby guests. Her protective instinct flared visibly. "Later," Jasmine said firmly, nodding toward approaching business associates. "We'll talk about everything at home, I promise." The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and business discussions. Jasmine noticed Nathan watching them from across the room, his expression increasingly haunted as the evening progressed. Caroline remained at his side, her social smile never wavering, though her eyes frequently darted between her husband and the Williams-Montgomery family with growing suspicion. When they finally arrived home, the twins immediately kicked off their formal shoes in the entryway, a teenage habit Jasmine hadn't managed to break, and turned to her expectantly. "Okay, we're home now," Zoe stated, crossing her arms. "Tell us everything." Jasmine sighed, setting her clutch on the entryway table. "Let me change first. This conversation deserves comfortable clothes and probably some ice cream." 15 minutes later, they gathered in the kitchen. Jasmine had changed into yoga pants and a soft sweater, a stark contrast to the commanding presence she'd projected at the gala. The twins sat at the island counter, still in their formal dresses but with ice cream bowls before them. "How much did you hear tonight?" Jasmine asked, serving herself a small portion of chocolate chip. "That he told you that you were insignificant and without value," Zoe quoted precisely, "and something about $5,000 to solve a problem." Jasmine winced. She had hoped to shield them from the cruelest details. "Yes, that's what happened when I told him I was pregnant with you." "So he knew about us?" Zoe demanded, her spoon hovering halfway to her mouth. "All this time?" "He knew I was pregnant," Jasmine clarified. "I didn't know it was twins yet. He didn't want to be involved. He offered money for an abortion and had already signed papers renouncing any parental rights." Zoe's analytical mind connected the dots immediately. "That's why we don't have his last name." "Yes, and it's why I've never pursued child support or any contact." Jasmine took a deep breath. "I always planned to tell you the complete truth when you were older. I just wanted to protect you from feeling unwanted." "But we were unwanted," Zoe said bluntly. "By him, anyway." "You were always wanted by me," Jasmine responded firmly, "from the moment I knew you existed, and by Catherine and Walter and so many others who love you." "Why did he look so shocked tonight?" Zoe asked. "If he knew about us? He didn't know you were twins, and I don't think he ever expected to see us again, especially not like this." Jasmine gestured vaguely, encompassing their success, their stability, everything they'd built without him. "You mean rich and famous?" Zoe suggested with a hint of satisfaction. Jasmine smiled slightly. "I mean accomplished and thriving. When he rejected us, he assumed I would remain insignificant. That was his word. Seeing me receive that award, seeing you both so brilliant and poised, it wasn't the future he envisioned for us." "Is that why you work so hard?" Zoe asked quietly. "To prove him wrong?" The question struck deep, forcing Jasmine to consider motivations she rarely examined. "At first, maybe. I was 19, heartbroken, and determined to show him his mistake. But over time it became about us, about creating opportunities for you, and then about the technology itself and the impact it could have." They talked late into the night, Jasmine answering their questions with as much honesty as she could while still trying to protect them from the harshest truths. She explained her night in the bus terminal, the shelter, the 2 jobs while pregnant. She described Walter's mentorship and Catherine's support. Through it all, she emphasized not the hardship but the journey, the small victories that had accumulated into their current life. When the twins finally went to bed, emotionally exhausted but with a new understanding of their history, Jasmine sat alone in her living room processing the evening's confrontation. Seeing Nathan again had been less traumatic than she'd feared in her younger years, but more complicated than she'd expected. The frightened, wounded girl inside her had finally faced her demon, only to find him diminished, no longer the powerful figure who had crushed her spirit, but a failing executive watching his inherited empire crumble. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a Houston winter day that felt more like spring. Jasmine had barely slept, but adrenaline carried her through her morning routine. The twins were unusually quiet at breakfast, still processing the previous night's revelations. "Are we still going to the science presentation?" Zoe asked tentatively. "Absolutely," Jasmine confirmed. "Nothing has changed about our plans or our lives because of last night." But as they finished breakfast, the building's security desk called. "Ms. Williams-Montgomery, there's a Nathan Reynolds in the lobby insisting on seeing you. He says it's urgent and personal." Jasmine felt a flash of anger. Of course he would show up unannounced, expecting accommodation. "Tell him I'm not available." After ending the call, she turned to find both twins watching her intently. "Was that him?" Zoe asked. Jasmine nodded, not wanting to lie. "He's downstairs." The twins exchanged one of their silent communications that had fascinated Jasmine since infancy, a look that seemed to convey paragraphs of meaning without words. "We want to meet him," Zoe announced, clearly speaking for both of them. "Are you sure?" Jasmine asked, studying their expressions. "You don't owe him anything." "We're not doing it for him," Zoe explained quietly. "We're doing it for us, to see for ourselves." Jasmine considered their request, recognizing the maturity behind it. At 14, they were developing their own identities, their own needs separate from hers. Perhaps this confrontation was necessary for their journey too. "All right," she agreed, "but I'll be with you the entire time, and if at any point you want him to leave, just say so." When Nathan stepped off the private elevator into the penthouse apartment, his appearance betrayed a sleepless night. His designer suit was immaculate as always, but his eyes were bloodshot, his face drawn with tension. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, his voice hoarse. His gaze moved immediately to the twins, who stood side by side near the living room entrance, a united front of teenage assessment. "The girls wanted to meet you," Jasmine explained, her tone making it clear this was the only reason he'd been allowed up. "Please, sit down." Nathan lowered himself stiffly onto the edge of the sofa, looking profoundly uncomfortable in the elegant space that represented everything Jasmine had built without him. The twins sat opposite, their identical green eyes, his eyes, studying him with unnerving intensity. "I know that nothing I say can compensate for what I did," he began, his rehearsed speech already faltering under their combined scrutiny. "But I want you to know that I deeply regret my actions 15 years ago." "Why now?" Zoe asked clinically, her analytical mind cutting straight to the core issue. "The Reynolds oil lost 62% of its market value in the last 3 years. Your shares dropped 18% just last month. Is it coincidence that you appeared just when Mom signed a $300 million contract with NASA?" Nathan blanched at the teenager who spoke like a financial analyst delivering a devastating assessment. "I'm not here for money," he protested. "I came seeking forgiveness, a chance to know my daughters." "We're not your daughters," Zoe responded, her tone reflecting her mother's strength. "Biologically, maybe, but a father is someone who raises you, who is present." Jasmine watched the exchange with a mixture of pain and pride. Her daughters, brilliant and strong, were facing with dignity the man who had rejected them before they were even born. "Jasmine," Nathan turned to her, desperation evident in his voice. "Please, I know I made the worst mistake of my life. I've lost everything that matters. My second marriage is ending. I barely know my son. The company is sinking." "And that should move me?" Jasmine asked calmly. "You told me in no uncertain terms that I wasn't worthy of your time or name, that I was good only for entertainment but not for building a respectable family. I was an arrogant idiot." "Yes, you were," Jasmine agreed simply. "But you know what's ironic, Nathan? You were right about one thing. I really wasn't worthy of the Reynolds name. because I was destined to create my own name, one that's worth more than yours now, in every sense." While Nathan Reynolds contemplated the ruins of his empire and the emptiness of his choices, Jasmine Williams Montgomery moved forward, her story not defined by the abandonment she suffered, but by the empire she built from the ashes of that rejection, proving that her value had always been indeed inestimable. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, illuminating the faces of those gathered in the living room. Nathan's desperation hung in the air like a tangible presence, but it found no purchase in the expressions of the three women facing him. For years he had existed in their narrative only as an absence, a wound that had slowly healed. Now, confronted with the flesh-and-blood reality of him, Jasmine found herself unexpectedly calm. "I think you should leave now," she said quietly. "The girls have their science presentation this morning and we need to prepare." Nathan stood reluctantly, his eyes still fixed on the twins. Would it be possible to talk again? Perhaps after you've had time to process everything?" Zoe and Zoe exchanged another of their silent communications before Zoe answered, "We'll think about it." It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance, but it wasn't an outright rejection either. Nathan nodded, seeming to understand that this small concession was more than he deserved. As Jasmine walked him to the elevator, he paused, turning to face her. "I've thought about you over the years," he admitted, "especially when things started falling apart. I wondered what happened to you. But you never looked," Jasmine observed, not a question but a statement of fact. "No," he acknowledged. "I was too afraid of what I might find, too afraid of facing what I'd done." The elevator doors opened and Nathan stepped inside. As they closed between them, Jasmine felt an unexpected sense of closure, not because he had apologized, but because she had finally confirmed what she had long suspected. His rejection had never been about her inadequacy, but about his own weakness. After he left, Jasmine found the twins waiting in the kitchen. "Are you both okay?" she asked gently. "I thought I'd feel something more," Zoe confessed. "Anger or sadness or something. But he just seemed pathetic," Zoe finished, her assessment clinical rather than cruel. Jasmine wrapped an arm around each of them. "Whatever you're feeling or not feeling is valid. This is a lot to process, and there's no right way to respond." "He doesn't seem happy," Zoe observed. "Even with all his money and his perfect-looking wife and his other child." "Happiness doesn't come from those things," Jasmine replied. "It comes from building something meaningful, from connections that matter." Later that morning, watching the twins present their scientific research with poise and confidence, Jasmine felt a surge of pride that momentarily overwhelmed all other emotions. These extraordinary young women had emerged from circumstances that should have limited them, bearing no scars from the rejection that had preceded their birth. Whatever Nathan might feel now, regret, curiosity, even genuine remorse, couldn't diminish what they had built together. The next morning brought an unexpected development. The Wall Street Journal published a brief but pointed article about the tense encounter between green energy innovator Jasmine Williams Montgomery and oil executive Nathan Reynolds at the Chamber of Commerce Gala. While the piece stopped short of confirming a past relationship, it noted the striking resemblance between Reynolds and Williams Montgomery's teenage daughters, fueling speculation throughout Houston's business community. "Mom, we're trending on Twitter," Zoe announced over breakfast, scrolling through her phone. "Someone posted photos from the gala comparing our eyes to his." Jasmine sighed, setting down her coffee. "I'm sorry this is becoming public. I wanted to protect your privacy." "It's not your fault," Zoe said pragmatically. "Statistically, it was inevitable that someone would notice once we were in the same room." The twins left for school, their security detail now doubled given the sudden media interest. Jasmine had barely settled into her office when Catherine called. "Have you seen the journal?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, the twins are aware." That's not all, Catherine continued. Augustus Reynolds just called the foundation. He wants to meet with you, privately. Jasmine's grip tightened on her phone. Augustus? Nathan's father? The very same. He was surprisingly respectful. Said he only recently learned about the girls and wants to make amends. The request left Jasmine conflicted. Augustus Reynolds represented the family legacy that had deemed her unworthy, yet he was also the twins' biological grandfather, a connection they might someday want to explore. Tell him I'll meet him, she decided finally, but on neutral ground, not at either of our offices. The following afternoon, Jasmine arrived at a private room in Houston's Museum of Fine Arts, a location chosen for both its discretion and its neutral territory. Augustus Reynolds was already seated, his imposing figure somewhat diminished by age but still commanding respect. At 72, his silver hair and tailored suit gave him the appearance of a statesman rather than an oil baron. Ms. Williams Montgomery, he greeted her, rising with evident effort. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Mr. Reynolds, she acknowledged, taking the seat across from him. I'll come straight to the point, Augustus began after they had declined the offered refreshments. I only learned of my granddaughter's existence 2 days ago. Nathan finally admitted everything after the journal article appeared. Jasmine remained silent, allowing him to continue. I want to apologize, Augustus said, his voice gruff but sincere. Not just for my son's inexcusable behavior, but for my own failure as a father. I raised him with privilege but without compassion or responsibility. The admission surprised her. Why are you telling me this? Because I failed as a father to raise a decent man, Augustus replied simply. And that failure affected you and those girls in ways I can never fully comprehend or remedy. His directness was unexpected but appreciated. What exactly are you hoping for from this meeting, Mr. Reynolds? I'd like to know my granddaughters, he admitted. Not to insert myself into their lives uninvited, but to be available if they ever wish to know their heritage, and to ensure they understand that Nathan's failings are not reflections of their worth. Jasmine studied him carefully. Unlike Nathan's desperate plea, Augustus's request seemed measured, respectful of boundaries. That would be their decision to make, not mine. They're old enough to have a say in who they allow into their lives. Of course, Augustus agreed. I wouldn't expect otherwise. As their meeting concluded, Augustus handed her a business card with his personal number handwritten on the back. If they ever want to reach out, or if you need anything, I'm available. No pressure, no expectations. Later that week, news broke that Nathan Reynolds had been removed as executive vice president of Reynolds Oil following an emergency board meeting. The official statement cited the company's recent environmental and financial setbacks, but industry insiders suggested that the revelations about his abandoned daughters had been the final straw for the board. Jasmine shared this development with the twins that evening, careful to present the information neutrally. Your biological grandfather has asked if you might want to meet him someday, and Nathan has been removed from his position at Reynolds Oil. Are those things connected? Zoe asked perceptively. Possibly, Jasmine acknowledged. The company was already struggling, but the publicity around our situation may have accelerated the board's decision. Do you think we should meet our grandfather? Zoe questioned, unusually hesitant. That's entirely your choice, Jasmine assured them. He seems sincere in wanting to know you, but you don't owe him or anyone in that family your time or attention. The twins considered this, their expressions thoughtful. Maybe eventually, Zoe said finally. But not right now. We need time. 3 weeks later, the twins decided they were ready to meet Augustus. The meeting took place at Catherine's home, neutral territory that still felt safe and familiar. Augustus arrived alone, bringing no gifts except a single photo album. These are pictures of your grandmother, he explained as the twins explored the album cautiously. She passed away before you were born, but you have her musical talents, according to your mother. The initial stiffness gradually eased as Augustus shared family stories without pressure or expectation. He answered their questions honestly, including the difficult ones about Nathan, neither defending nor condemning his son, but acknowledging the failures that had occurred. By the time he left, something small but significant had shifted. The twins had gained a piece of their history without compromising their identity, and Augustus had witnessed firsthand the remarkable young women his son had foolishly discarded. As spring turned to summer, a new rhythm established itself. Augustus visited occasionally, always calling ahead, always respectful of boundaries. Nathan remained conspicuously absent, having relocated to Reynolds Oil's Dallas office following his demotion to a minor regional role. In July, Jasmine received an invitation to speak at a sustainable energy conference in Washington, D.C. The event represented another milestone for Williams Tech, recognition at the national policy level that their technology represented the future of energy storage. "You should bring the girls," Catherine suggested. "It would be good for them to see you in that environment." Jasmine agreed, and 3 months after the confrontation that had changed their family narrative, she stood at a podium in Washington, accepting the National Sustainable Innovation Award. In the audience, Augustus sat proudly beside the twins, the grandfather who had entered their lives late but with genuine respect and affection. That same evening, in a sparsely furnished Dallas apartment, Nathan watched the live stream of the ceremony on his laptop. The company-provided housing was a far cry from his River Oaks mansion, now listed for sale as part of his divorce settlement. Caroline had filed papers within days of his removal from leadership, her departure as efficiently executed as any corporate transition. On screen, Jasmine spoke with authority and vision about the future of energy storage. The camera occasionally panned to the audience where his father sat beside the twins, more engaged and animated than Nathan had seen him in years. The sight of the three of them together, his father and his daughters, forming a connection that excluded him, burned more than the loss of his position or his marriage. His son James was visiting his grandparents in Connecticut for the summer, Caroline having negotiated generous custody terms that minimized Nathan's involvement. At 8, James barely knew his father, a reality that had seemed acceptable when Nathan was building his career but now represented another irreparable failure. As the ceremony concluded and applause filled the auditorium, Nathan closed the laptop. His spacious apartment felt suddenly confining, the silence oppressive. He had lost everything that mattered: family, legacy, purpose, while Jasmine had built something extraordinary from the very circumstances he had expected to destroy her. The greatest triumph of Jasmine was not her wealth or recognition, but the life she had built without depending on a man who had considered her disposable. Her true victory was creating daughters who understood their own intrinsic value, who would never need validation from someone who failed to recognize their potential. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.